Salam, peace be upon you. We have already earned a very hard kind of honesty in this episode. We have learned how to take raw phase comparisons, delta phi, meaning differences of phi, inside the licensed finite window, and turn them into a certified local description, a clean domain, a legal lift, a derivative field A equal to d phi tilde, finite jets up to our maximum order n max, topology tokens were needed, and lie detectors that catch illegal commutation and boundary interior cheating. So far, we can certify local structure without pretending anything happens. Now listen closely, because part 25 is where many beautiful frameworks quietly collapse. Up to this point, we can stand inside one window, one patch of reality, and say, with passport discipline, here is what we can publicly certify here. But a single patch is not a world. A single window is not reality. A single map page is not an atlas. And if we forget that, we will start hallucinating global claims from local certificates. That is exactly the kind of cheating episode 14 was built to prevent. So in this part, we installed a rule that turns local truth into global meaning, without smuggling geometry, without smuggling dynamics, without smuggling story. We installed the Atlas assembly and the overlap meaning rule. Here is the mission, spoken plainly. Define global meaning as what survives across overlaps, not what one patch claims privately. Here is the core, spoken like law. A world compiles only as an atlas of licensed windows whose overlap agreements are auditable. Single window claims are local at best. If that sounds abstract, let's make it physical. Imagine an actual atlas of maps. One page shows a valley. Another page shows the neighboring valley. They overlap around the ridge and the river. Each page can use its own grid lines, its own scale, even its own symbols. One page can call a road Route A, another can call it Highway 7. That is fine. Different descriptions are allowed. But in the overlap, where both pages claim to represent the same ground, the river cannot jump to a different place. The ridge cannot flip sides. If the pages disagree in the overlap, the atlas is broken. Not because one page is evil, because there is no single stitched world you can walk through. That is exactly our situation with windows and passports. Each license window is a page. Each window has its passport. What was measured, what was masked, what was excised, what coherence threshold gamma was passed, what identifiability rank was achieved, what maximum order n max was licensed, what uncertainty lineage was carried. Inside each page, we can build a local description. But if we want to talk about the world, we must stitch pages. And stitching has one meaning: overlap agreement. This is why we call it an atlas, not as poetry, as a strict procedure. Now we make the overlap meaning rule explicit, in the simplest everyday language that keeps the rigor intact. Global meaning is what remains unchanged when we translate a certified structure from one window into another window, inside their overlap, using only allowed redescriptions. Allowed redescriptions means the things we already promised. We're allowed to shift phi by constant because absolute phi is mute and only differences are public. We are allowed to shift the lift because any lift is private and only lift invariants are public. We are allowed to change charts because coordinates are not primitive here. We are allowed to relocate branch cuts because cuts are bookkeeping, not reality, and any public invariant must not depend on where we place the cut. We are allowed to refine a window, zoom in or change resolution, but only in a way that preserves the passport logic and updates uncertainty honestly. And now we add the new clause. We are allowed to translate between overlapping windows, but only if the overlap itself is legal and the passports are compatible, and the overlap domain is typed correctly. If those conditions are not met, there is no meaningful global statement. There is only local talk. Let's put this into an analogy that everyone feels in their bones. Imagine 5 people standing around one mountain at dawn. One is on the sunny side, one is in shadow, one is higher up, one is behind a tree, one is hearing the river but not seeing it. They all describe the same place. Their descriptions will differ. That does not mean reality is subjective. It means windows exist. It means passports exist. It means coherence differs. If we pick one person and declare, that is the whole truth, we are not doing science. We are doing authority worship. But if we take their overlap, the part of the scene all of them can access in some way, and we ask what survives translation between them, we can build a shared picture. The shared picture will not include everything any one person claimed. It will include what the overlaps can certify. That is the Atlas logic. Now listen. We must not romanticize this into agreement by voting. This is not about who shouts louder. This is not social consensus. This is auditability. The agreement, we mean, is not emotional. It is structural. It is the same kind of agreement as when two independent rulers measured the same table and both, after correcting for units and calibration, give compatible lengths within uncertainty. That is all. Now we weave in the episode 14 toolchain, because global meaning cannot skip steps. Say it with us, because this is compulsory. Licensed window, then passport and coherence and identifiability, then NMAX and uncertainty, then local lift, then cuts if needed, then excisions, then certified domain D, then A equals D phi tilde, then finite jets up to NMAX, then invariance collapse, then topology and defects, then invariant bases, then stability and entities, then scale stratification, then escape test, then handoff. Part 25 lives right where local certificates become Atlas stitching. Everything before is local. Everything after depends on stitching being honest. And we must keep tri-unity alive even here. Every certified structure still has 3 readouts: omega as cadence, kappa as texture, nu as drift. We do not treat time, space, or motion as primitives. Even when we talk about overlap, we are not assuming a background space that contains both windows like a box. Overlap is defined operationally. 2 licensed windows have a region of comparability where both produce certified tokens that can be translated into each other under allowed redescriptions. Now we install the gates, not as a list you memorize, but as an immune system we carry while we stitch. First, the overlap legality gate. Before we compare 2 windows, we must prove there is a real overlap in what they can talk about. Not both are about oceans in a vague way. A legal overlap means there is a region, a subdomain, where both windows have certified domain membership, where both have passed coherence threshold gamma in that region, where both have identifiability sufficient to support the orders we want to compare, and where the overlap is not eaten by alias zones or boundary colors. If window 1 is clean there, but window 2 is noisy and below gamma, the overlap is not legal for certification. We can log it, but we cannot stitch global meaning from it. Second, the passport compatibility gate. This is the gate that prevents us from doing fake translations. If one window measured sea surface height and another measured temperature, we cannot pretend they speak the same phi without a bridge. A bridge is not a vibe. A bridge is either encodable, interface only, unknown, or rejected. We type it E, I, U, or R. If we claim encodable, we must specify the translation rule and its uncertainty. If we cannot, the passports are incompatible and the atlas cannot stitch that comparison. Third, the domain typing gate for overlaps. Even if window 1 has domain D1 and window 2 has domain D2, the overlap domain is not whichever we like. It is the intersection after excising all alias zones from both and after adding a safety color away from cuts and boundaries where operators become fragile. The overlap has its own Nmax, often lower than either window, because the overlap inherits the weakest identifiability and the most conservative uncertainty. This is humility turned into math. Fourth, the refinement invariance gate. This is where most false discoveries get caught. People zoom in, change resolution, change window size, and then claim new effects. Our rule is severe. Refinement may change conditioning and uncertainty, but it must not change certified invariance, unless new topology tokens become visible or new aliasing masks are legitimately introduced or a passport changes. In other words, seeing more detail is allowed. Changing what was already certified as invariant with no typed reason is not allowed. Now, before we go further, we do the mandatory stress test out loud, because overlap meaning must survive these transformations. We test. Phi goes to phi plus constant. That should change nothing public. We test. Lift shifts. Phi tilde changes by an integer multiple of 2 pi in the bookkeeping, but A equals D phi tilde must give the same public derivative field on D. We test. Chart change. The numbers and components may change, but the invariant token we certify must be unchanged. We test. Cut relocation. If we move the cut line, any claimed invariant must remain the same, or else it was cut dependent and therefore private. We test. Window refinement. If we split one window into two smaller windows that cover the same region and stitch them back with overlap agreement, the global invariant must match the original within uncertainty, unless a typed obstruction appears. All of that is the overlap meaning rule in action. Now let's give you powerful examples across scales, because the mind only trusts what it can picture. Start with something human scale, language translation. Suppose we tell a story in Dari, and then we translate it into English, and then into Pashto, and back into Dari. Many words may shift, some metaphors will change, but if the meaning is real, something survives. If everything changes wildly, then the original meaning was not stable enough to be public. It was private tone, private implication, private cultural shorthand. Global meaning is what survives translation across overlaps. That is exactly what we do with windows. One window speaks instrument A at resolution R1. Another speaks instrument B at resolution R2. Overlap is the shared part of their world. The meaning is what survives translation. Now go smaller. A microscope and a satellite looking at the same coastline. The satellite sees a smooth curve. The microscope sees grains of sand and rocks. Are these contradictions? Not if refinement invariance holds. The smooth curve is what remains when the grains are averaged under the satellite's passport. If the satellite claims the coast bends left, and the microscope, after honest coarse graining, says it bends right, that is not a new discovery. That is a broken atlas. Either a passport problem, an aliasing problem, or a defect we failed to type. Now go even smaller. Quantum interference. Two experiments measure the phase shift around the loop. One uses electrons, another uses superconducting currents. Different windows, different passports. But in the overlap, the same loop topology, the same flux threading a hole, the phase winding is an invariant, modulo 2 pi. If both experiments, after honest translation, agree on the same winding number, that winding is global structure in the atlas. If one claims winding 1 and the other claims winding 0, we do not invent mystery forces. We audit. Are the loop definitions the same? Are the cuts accounted for? Is the modulo discipline applied? Are the passports compatible? Are there alias zones near the boundary? Is the coherence sufficient? Only if all that passes and mismatch remains do we get an escape candidate. Now go larger. Climate. One window is satellites, another is ground stations, another is ocean buoys. None alone is the climate. The climate, as public structure, is what survives translation across overlaps. If one window claims a trend and others disagree, we do not shout ideology. We build an atlas ledger, diagnose passport differences, identify alias zones like urban heat islands or sensor drift, and ask what survives overlap. That surviving structure is global meaning. Now go even larger, a civilization. One window is economic data, another is health data, another is education data, different passports. Overlap means shared populations and time intervals where translation rules can be typed. If we cannot type a bridge, we do not pretend the datasets prove each other. We keep the atlas honest. So the point is not that truth is impossible. The point is that truth has a form. It must survive translation. Now we state the prediction of part 25 in a way you can test without waiting for the future. Because our predictions in episode 14 are forbidden as footprints, not time stories. Prediction. Refining patches changes conditioning and uncertainty, not certified invariance. And new effects that appear only because of refinement collapse to earlier masking mistakes, typing mistakes, or passport incompatibility. That means, if someone says, when I used the smaller window, I found a new global effect, our framework says, no, a smaller window is not a global effect. Show the overlap. Show what survives translation. If the effect does not survive overlap, it stays local. Now the falsifier, the one thing that would truly hurt this part and therefore must be named clearly. Falsifier. Invariants change under refinement with no new defects, no new aliasing, and no passport changes. In everyday words, we take a coarse window and certify an invariant. Then we take a finer window covering the same territory, with the same quantity measured, just better. We excise aliasing honestly, we scan for defects, we keep passports consistent. We coarse-grain the fine data back to the coarse resolution. If the invariant changes beyond uncertainty with no typed reason, the Atlas principle fails. That would mean reality itself is not stitchable by overlap survival. That would be an escape candidate of the highest value because it would say, the whole is not even consistent with the parts under honest translation. We do not fear this falsifier. We welcome it because it is crisp, it is auditable. It is exactly what a serious framework should allow, a way to be wrong. Now we create the audit artifact because in episode 14, nothing counts unless it goes into the ledger. The audit artifact of part 25 is an Atlas registry and an overlap ledger. What goes in the Atlas registry? For each window, a window ID, passport ID, coherence status, gamma pass or fail, identifiability rank, maximum order N max, domain D summary, alias excision masks, cut declarations, lift method, uncertainty lineage, and the list of certified invariants and tokens, jets up to N max, and topology tokens. What goes in the overlap ledger? For each pair of windows that claim overlap, an overlap certificate, the overlap domain D overlap, the passport compatibility verdict, the translation rule if encodable, the refinement comparison log if one is a refinement of the other, the before and after invariant values with uncertainties, and a diagnosis entry if there is mismatch. And we must say what mismatch means in spoken math because this is audio. Suppose window 1 certifies an invariant we call I1. Window 2 certifies I2. In the overlap, after translation, we compare them. We compute a residual, meaning the difference, and we compare it to a threshold built from the combined uncertainty. If the difference is within uncertainty, we log agreement. If it is larger, we do not panic. We classify. Classification means we ask, is it a cut bookkeeping issue, meaning the comparison accidentally crossed a declared discontinuity? Is it aliasing leakage, meaning the overlap is too close to an excised zone? Is it defect presence, meaning one window resolves a defect token the other cannot? Is it passport failure, meaning one window's coherence or calibration does not support the claim? Or is it unexplained, meaning all admissible diagnoses are excluded? Only the last case becomes an escape candidate. Now we tie this back to the deep philosophy that made this whole project necessary. But we keep it practical. A world is not a thing we possess. A world is what our certified descriptions can stitch without contradiction. This is not relativism. This is public science. It is the only way to have shared reality without pretending we have God's eye. And notice what we did not do. We did not say the Atlas creates reality. We did not say the world emerges by history. We did not say anything evolves. We did not add dynamics. We did not add meaning. We only specified the conditions under which global structure can be certified. Now we deliver the carry line, the one sentence you take with you like a tool. Carry. Global meaning is stitched from local truth. But we say it with its full teeth. Global meaning is not what one patch claims. Global meaning is what survives translation across overlaps, with passports and domains and uncertainty fully honored. Now the revocation clause, because this is where people will try to cheat. Revocation clause. Patch private claims that do not survive overlaps are rejected as non-global and cannot be promoted. In practice, that means if someone sees something in one window and tries to declare it a law of nature, we ask, where is the Atlas entry? Where is the overlap ledger? Which other windows confirm it in overlap? If none, it stays local. It may still be interesting. It may guide new measurements, but it is not global structure. And we add one more enforcement line because it matters. If two patches disagree on overlaps, they do not both get to remain certified as if nothing happened. Overlap disagreement triggers passport review. Sometimes both passports stand, but the translation bridge was wrong. Sometimes one passport fails. Sometimes both fail in that region. The Atlas is not polite. The Atlas is honest. Now we close by placing part 25 inside the big episode 14 arc, without turning it into a list. We started with raw comparability, delta phi. We built windows and passports because without a window, there is no public claim. We built lifts because differentiation needs an unwrap. And we built A equal to d phi tilde because that is the first public derivative object. We built finite jets up to n max because we do not pretend to know infinite smoothness. We built topology tokens because some truths are not in derivatives. They are in holes and windings. We built lie detectors because calculus can be abused and boundaries can be cheated. And now we build the atlas because the world cannot be spoken from one patch. So this part is not decoration. It is the bridge from local certification to global readability. And here is the final, always true line, spoken again so it stays in the listener's body. Episode 14 does not describe reality. It specifies the conditions under which reality can be described at all. If you, listening to us, want to go deeper, deeper than this audio story, deeper into the formal spine, the formal work can be found on Zenodo by searching for holophase. That is where the definitions, the proofs, the tokens, and the gates live in their strict form. Now we seal part 25 with one last image you can hold. Imagine you are holding a patch of cloth, woven tightly. That is one window. It is real cloth. But one patch is not a garment. To make a garment, patches must be stitched. And stitching is not wishful. The threads must meet. The patterns must align at the seams. If they do not, you do not claim you have a robe. You admit you have fragments. Our atlas rule is that seam. The world is what the seams can hold. And from this point on, any claim that tries to jump from my patch says to the world is without passing through overlap audit will be revoked. Not because we are harsh, because we are building a compiler, not a mythology. So we walk forward with the discipline of an atlas, local truth, overlap audit, global meaning, and nothing else. Always, peace be upon you.